Hi, I'm going to do a series of shares because I'm going to be away enjoying a holiday with 10 friends. How good is that? So rather than leave a gap in the sharings, what I'm doing is I'm going to share what assists me enormously in seeing people, and I very much get a lot of information from fingers and toes, to tell you the truth, because the fingers, the outlet of energy from fingers, tells us a lot about how energy moves through our body. And a session can often start off with a particular finger with a particular direction or dimension around it. So what I thought I'd do is I would share what information and the different ways that can show up. So the little finger is what I get a lot of information about communication from what the little finger has to say. And of course it depends on whether it's the right or left hand. So when it's the left hand, it's more to do with that communication we have with our spirit and the interchange more on that holistic side of things. And when it's on the right side, it's more communication to do with the mental aspects. When the communication is really full on and fierce, sometimes the energy is so far and so energetic that it can take over, and in that communication may be difficult to listen to or hear from another person. The thing is, communication at the base of it is what it's all about. Our nerves communicating in the synapses, and what it communicates is what it is. Whether the lymphatics flow or don't flow, when they don't flow, there's no communication, and we can have blockages in the lymphatic system. When nutrition is broken down or not broken down, and how it travels, is all communication. It's all communication. Neurolymphatic vasculars, meridians, origin and insertion, and emotion and nutrition, it's all communication. There is communication also, and it has shown up that there are beings who, before entering into this dimension, have a very clear picture of their life before coming in. And there have been a few times where as soon as they arrive, it already gets messed and mixed up. The communication from before to being born completely shifts everything, which is, this world is a paradox. With this one particular being, when she had arrived and was very young, there was this incredible frustration because the picture before coming was so clear in its creativity and what it was going to do. It expected the tribe and those who were going to play with her in the unfolding of that to really be there when she arrived. That hadn't happened, and the consequences of the disappointment on the physical body, as soon as when even the teenage years appeared, was quite devastating. Then there was this other being who also saw very, very clearly in bright lights and colours her life, and in coming into this world, it was like a black screen arrived. And it was okay when she was 20, 30, 40, between 50 and 60. It started to become problematic and frustrating that what she saw wasn't coming to her. It hadn't arrived, when in fact it was within her fully. And the interesting thing was that in the actual physical world, all the pieces were literally in place for what it was. But there was this, how come it hasn't happened? Because the communication of what was before was inside. And it's about seeing that you need to bring that communication out, to communicate it out into the world, to bring that light from within out, and in that have it appear in the world. So inside appearing outside is a form of communication. And when it is seen, we can then enter into the creation in terms of the inside, having insight of the inside, then to bring it out into physicality, because then it is seen and acted upon. But when that black screen arrives, there's a confusion of, why can't I see it anymore? And of course, it's all there. The thing is to activate and communicate and bring it out with clarity. Sometimes communication is not connecting with what is being said, and that communication, there's all sorts of communication, but there is communication where we're too scared to communicate because we don't want to look stupid. And then there are those who are happy asking questions. They're free in their communication, yeah? But there's sometimes not having clarity in asking questions. It's not responded to well. It's not convenient. So staying with the communication until it is clear and understood by both is pretty important. And then there are the communicators that show up like they're pretending to communicate, or they withhold communication because they feel nobody is going to understand it, and then they don't understand themselves because it starts to become inauthentic in some way. I can remember doing what's called a sound balance, and it turned out that this woman needed to actually really scream. And she's saying, I'm screaming all the time. And I said, yeah, are they listening? Because we can be screaming, wanting to be heard, or we can actually be very clear and be heard. And by the time we had finished the balancing, she was able to quietly say no, just no, and it felt loud. Communication is incredible clarity. So yes, it shows up in many ways. But there's often an interface between what we've brought into this dimension and how we interact, often with the capacity to view ourselves in hindsight from the other side as to how are we doing, communicating with ourselves and being very clear about what is it that we know we want to bring out more of or to create in the world. The essence that came up in relationship to that finger that may be useful as a reflection is Monga Waratah. And it says here, Monga Waratah is a shrub up to 4 meters, and it has a very small distribution around the moist forested areas and creeks in the Mangalo River near Braidwood in New South Wales. Its flower has the appearance of an open hand reaching out. Which brings to mind a being that came and saw me who felt, why am I not respected? Why am I not heard? And it did show up, this open hand. And I often find that in a session when someone has, something drops in, they grab it and close their hand around it as if to say, I've got it. But truly, when you can let it go, because you have it, that is as clear as you can be. What showed up with this being was an amazing aspect of a depth of what I would call deep Buddhist nature that has no identity. And the depth of that communication, of that no identity, was so profound in this being's life that to speak had so much depth to it, yet couldn't be connected to, because the non-identity was so loud in her being. And it showed up in communication as being at one end of the spectrum in this no identity. And if this is a midline of where we communicate with others, what was happening with this non-identity, that the other end was continuously saying what needed to happen, what was right, what you need to do, what I see, how I feel my rights, and all that communication was hitting here. But through that depth of non-identification, it had no action. Of course, there's a place of no identity. But while we're in the world, we need to communicate. And in recognizing that nature, and it was so recognized, it was wonderful. It was like, yes, that's what it feels like. In recognizing it, in communicating it, in seeing it, we can now act in relationship to it. So then it becomes more, I can now meet here and express myself, communicate myself. So the negative conditions are neediness, codependency, inability to do things alone, disempowerment, addictive personality. The positives are strengthening of one's will, which I would call clarity, reclaiming of one's spirit, belief that one can break the dependency of any behavior, substance or person, self-empowerment. There's often the great need, they need to understand me, they need to be able to get what it is I'm saying. Sometimes there's a neediness lightness in it. This essence can help a person find their inner strength. It addresses the negative conditions of disempowerment, of being overly needy, of feeling not strong enough. When we communicate without that neediness, you can place it on the table. It's there, it's spoken, and then see what the interchange is, whether it's picked up or not picked up. But having the clarity within yourself that it is spoken. Feeling unable to do things alone, of always needing the strength and support of others. Feeling choked or stifled in situations or relationships and feeling not able or strong enough to leave. This essence is very much addressing codependency as well as strengthening one's will. Consequently, it can be thought of when working with addiction. This remedy helps one to reclaim their spirit. Because communication, when we feel another has to be concerned about my concerns, has to understand it, sometimes that pushes people away. But to be able to interact where there's space for them to communicate, or to communicate something with care, and a space for the others to show up, so that communication is a two-way street, is where we hopefully meet at the round table, where we can place what we really want to say or have be understood. And if it's walked away from and never addressed, that is a form of communication that then you need to get clear about. There are so many dimensions around communication, but it does need to be held in free will. Free will for others and free will for yourself, for communication to really work well. Many aspects. This little finger, I could actually talk about it for a very long time, but they're just snippets of it, and I just didn't want to leave a blank week with nothing spoken in it. So to let you know what's going to happen in the couple of weeks following, while I'm away, is the finger, the emotional finger, the ring finger, is accountability. And I'll be discussing accountability next then and share that with you. Lots of love.